Alright everyone, what I have here is a chart of the Euro US dollar. And this is obviously the most liquid pair in the Forex market. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up a daily chart here of the Euro US dollar. And I'm going to basically go down the line and discuss some of the concepts and basically my basic method when I do a review for the week to determine where I'm going to be looking to take trades. Now, I am a trader, primarily an intraday trader, almost exclusively an intraday trader. That being said, every week I do a general analysis of the pairs I trade or the markets I trade, and I'm looking for situations where I can go both. Some situations will be going long, some situations will be going short. I don't know where price is going to go. I only know what I'm going to do when it reaches these zones, when it reaches these levels. So let's start breaking down into the technical aspects of it, the finer details, if you will. There's going to be a couple of things I'm going to cover here, including using Fibonacci's in a non-traditional sense to measure where things are, overbought or oversold on a relative level. Measuring what some call support and resistance, most do. I like to refer to it as supply and demand. Some of the rules I use to evaluate supply and demand levels are a little bit more detailed, a little more nuanced, and I find to be better at giving a good idea of whether a level is going to hold or not than simply the traditional supply or support and resistance measuring concepts, classical support and resistance. So I'm going to use the word supply and demand interchangeably with support and resistance. Supply is support. I'm sorry. Supply is resistance, and demand is support. So demand means things go up, supply means things go down. If there's too much supply, things go down. So that's what I'll be using here. I'm also going to be using Fibonacci's in a traditional sense. I'm also going to be using pivots and pivot levels and discussing exactly how I determine those levels, what I personally use. I'm also going to be discussing a little bit about how I measure specifically supply and demand, and also how supply and demand I relate to them on a longer term time frame. So there's going to be a lot covered. I don't know if I'm going to cover it all in this video. We will see. If time gets too long here, I'll probably cut it off and continue in a second, in a following video. But with that being said, without further ado, let's get down to it. So when I start my analysis for the week, the very first thing I do is I look at a daily chart, and I look to see where price has left recently after a period of consolidation or stalling, and if it has retraced back to it yet. And on the Euro USD, I'm not seeing anything in particular. I'm just going to pick a pair that I can show this concept with fairly simply. So I'm just going to go through and go look at all the majors. GBP USD, okay. That's not going to show it either. Let's try USD CHF. Okay. USD CHF doesn't have what I'm looking for, so I'm going to try CJPY. And I'm actually going to find a chart that shows it best before I continue on here. Alright, the USD CAD actually has a pretty good example of this. What I'm looking for is basically turning points in the market on a daily chart, and breakouts from those areas where price turned from or stalled at. So basically the way I do it is this. I look and see where our last swing highs and swing lows were, and I immediately see, well, here was a swing low right there, and we have a swing high recently right there. Now, once I find my swing low and my swing high, basically what I do is I look to see, I want to find out where price was, where it was during that time, or from that point. I'm not explaining this well, but it's easier to show. What I do is basically I take the base of the candle and I move up to the top. And the idea is I want to make sure I get the bulk of the candles here. And I can see if I were to draw a price line at the top of this candle, this one with the this would be 927. Okay, I can see that basically as we came, we stalled, we dropped down, and then price broke up and pretty much made a nice smooth move up. Okay, so once price starts breaking out, I just like to take where it really stalled from. And it really stalled, I would say, between obviously this low here, where the circle is, and this high right here. So this is, as I call, a daily demand level. Okay, really important stuff. If you guys want to find out more about supply and demand levels specifically, if you're not familiar with it or this seems really new to you, I recommend looking up Sam Seiden. That's S-A-M. Let's see. Give me just a moment to look this. I recommend looking up Sam Seiden. That's S-A-M, and then his last name is S-E-I-D-E-N. He has some free videos on the internet that you'll be able to find, and absolutely fantastic. This is the foundation of my entire trading methodology, and it was Sam Seiden's work that I would say took me from basically having trading being only a dream to actually trading full time being a reality. So it's that important, and it'll give you a lot better idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about supply and demand, which again is very similar to support and resistance. Essentially, they're the same. They're just measured and analyzed and looked at a little bit differently. So with that being said, the next thing I'm looking for are virgin supply and demand levels. When I say virgin, I mean something where price stalled, moved up from or down from, and price has not yet retraced to it. Okay, that fact that it hasn't retraced to it yet is important. The reason being is there's going to be people who missed out on that move, and if they can get back in, or if they can enter that move, with the way of the market when price pulls back to that level, they'll be fairly happy to do so. So what you do is you have an area where you have a higher probability. If price can reach that zone, that supply or demand zone, you have a higher probability of price reversing as a reaction, as opposed to just moving right through the zone. So in other words, it gives you one of those edges that you can say there's a greater likelihood that we will slow down and see a price reaction where if we moved up in the level, that we'll start to move down from it before we just move straight through it. And on the longer term time frames, this is more powerful. Obviously, just like most things in trading, setups on the daily charts tend to work better than setups on the 1 minute chart, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the supply zone that I see on the chart here on the daily time frame. Take the bottom of this candle and the top of this candle. Now, in this example, it happens to be the top and the bottom of the turning candle is where I'm drawing my zone. This isn't always the case. You'll probably see in later videos as I might do these for some of my analysis going on for the next couple of weeks, my basically real-time stuff on upcoming market potential moves. So you'll see kind of how I do that differently, but again, I recommend those Sam Seiden videos. So the first thing that I do is, like I said, I look at the daily chart and I look and see where my supply and demand levels are. Okay, and then down from here, if I keep moving down, I have a lower demand level, which actually is quite nice down here. It's a virgin level in that price dropped in, it stalled, and then turned and moved up, and we've never had a retracement back in this level. Once we broke out, we've never retraced back. Same as with this one. Once we broke down, we've not yet retraced back into it. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's the very first thing. Okay, and I think that is good enough to conclude video 1. So the first thing I'm doing is looking at that. I know, in summary, I will take a market turning point, try to get the meat of the consolidation, the bulk of the action that was there before it broke out from that pullback. I try to get the bulk of that, and that becomes a demand level. And same thing with the supply level. try to get the bulk of that, and that becomes a supply level. Um, so that's I think that's good enough to conclude video 1. So that's the very first step of what I do. To see the next step, I should say actually this is video 2. To see the next step, it'll be shown in video 3.